Welcome to the Our Labs podcast. Our special guest today is Austin Vance. Austin, man, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. The time's gonna fly by. It happens to everybody. So
I can't
get
wait.
ready. So, Austin, give everybody the 2 minute spiel on what you're doing today.
Yeah, I'm the CEO, founder of a company called Focused. We are a software development agency with offices in Denver and Chicago. Our specialization has always been in helping enable companies while we build products for them. And so a lot of AI work right now, kind of doing both enabling how to use and build with AI, but then also use AI as a developer to build better, faster, stronger, if you will. That's that's been
Nice.
a lot of what we're up to.
How long have you been in business?
I started the company 20 December of 2018. So I always say 2019 because that's really when the customers showed up. And if I say 2018, it adds a whole year to our age, you know.
That's fair. That's fair. 19.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. That's super fair. We'll get back to all that. This is really a show about you and sort of your journey on sort of how you got here today with Focused. So I got a couple of questions that I ask right out of the box. First one is, what year did you graduate high school and where were you?
I graduated high school in 2006 from Norman, Oklahoma. So yeah,
Oklahoma. All right.
the Norman High Tigers. So
That's one
yeah,
state I haven't been to. I haven't had a need to go to Oklahoma yet.
there's camaraderie in Okies. They call themselves Oklahomies. Um, but
Oklahomies.
there's a lot of us who grew up there and then left and don't really look back either. It's a great state, but good to visit.
What's the major city in Oklahoma again?
Oklahoma City. There's Tulsa too.
Tulsa. Tulsa.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Okay, next question. Okay, so Oklahoma 2006. That gives us a sort of time frame when you were 17, sort of 18. Here's it. Okay, now clear your mind. I don't want you to think too hard here. Clear your mind. First memory you have of working on a computer, doing something with a computer.
I first memory I have of doing something on a computer. I think the like way back, this is like pre-high school. So we're before you were it like pre-high school as we are. I got I don't know how, but I got like somehow into like Dreamweaver and building websites. So I built some websites in Dreamweaver. But I think even before that, I was into the HTML like HTML, GeoCities, MySpace stuff. So everybody was like customizing their MySpace pages with HTML. Had flashes and GIFs and music would autoplay and all that
Yeah,
kind of
but what
stuff.
was
That's
on your MySpace page, Con? Now,
oh
because
my
now
gosh.
you're talking about like 13, right?
Yeah.
Like what is Austin into at 13 on his MySpace? What would I have seen?
Guns N' Roses.
Okay, that's fair.
I was into Guns N' Roses, AC/DC. I was like all this classic rock. We did this. I was in a carpool, and one of the moms in the carpool, like she would just blast classic rock all the time, and I got super into it back in the middle school days. I even grew my hair out and
Did
dyed
you
it
have the
black.
jean jacket with the album
Yeah.
cover
Oh
painted on the
yeah.
back? Which album
Yeah. And I
cover
had the.
though?
Oh, I don't remember. I think it was
See,
a
that's
Misfits.
funny.
I think it was a Misfits jacket at jean
Oh
jacket with the
man.
Misfits on it.
So I was in high school in the late 80s, and that was the thing. Like you had the album cover painted on the back of your jean jacket. Well, my 21-year-old son, uh, forever has been into that same rock music, like Zeppelin, all that stuff. I found it fascinating that it just holds.
It holds
Like
so well.
it holds solid, right?
It's the art, man. It's just like it is truly a classic. Like you can listen to those albums all the way through even today. And you know, it's so funny you hear them play at a bar or a restaurant and you'll just watch people around the bar kind of singing them, like nodding their head because everybody just knows them. They're burned into Americana.
One of the kids was listening to something that sounded like Robert Plant and Zeppelin. I knew it wasn't, but it was really close. And I looked at them and I said, "Why are you listening to this? Why don't you listen to the real stuff?"
Yeah,
Right?
go back
Like,
to Zeppelin.
yeah, if this is what you like, and it sounds good, like, don't get me wrong, but like, why don't you just listen to the real, right? And they just looked at me like, "But I like this." I'm like, "Okay, it's fair."
Who was it? I'm curious who
I
the
don't know.
Zeppelin
I have
wannabe.
to.
Oh,
I
you don't
have
remember?
to. I don't remember in the 17. I don't know who it was. I don't remember. There's a few bands out there right now that have a clear sort of Zeppelin, Robert Plant sound. In fact, this band jumped one song. It sounded like Zeppelin, but the other song sounded like oh god damn, I can't remember the name. Those three guys, like dude, I can't remember. But they were bouncing. Um, who
All
did
over.
Neil Pearl? Who did Neil Pearl play for again?
I don't know.
Okay. Like if I could remember the band, you'd be like, yeah. But they were signing song for song. They were bouncing between all these amazing bands, and my brain was just like whoa, like wild.
Totally. I
All
would
right.
love to if there's new music that sounds like that music, I would love to get it into my Spotify because the the current the current loop is not my favorite. I spend a lot of time in the classic rock.
I'm gonna send you an email after this show, and I can
Love
talk
it.
to the kids because I if I say that to them, they'll like rattle off the couple bands that we were listening to.
Love it. I can't wait.
All right. So in 2006, you're 18. That's when you graduated high school. I want to talk about high school a little bit. All right. I want to know as you're entering high school, sort of what you're interested in at the time. Are you music, art, sports? Like, what's occupying your time?
High school was great. I was really deeply involved in the debate team. So I was the first of my high school to kind of break into the final rounds at the debate nationals for like my specific style of debate. It was like I lived and breathed for debate. I was a little bit kind of alternative counterculture. I wasn't great at class. Um, I spent a lot of time on the computer. I wasn't a gamer. I never have been a gamer, which is kind of odd because a lot of like programmers, I'm a programmer like through and through, but a lot of programmers started because they're like trying to mod a game or like hack it or bots or something like that. And it was never my drive. I got really involved in uh kind of the BitTorrent scene in early high school, so I was building BitTorrent websites and late high school, and then yeah, debate. I mean, debate kind of ran my life. Um,
So I'm like you. I can't play games. I hate playing games. I don't play games, but I've been programming like since the. I would
right,
write
like
games in BASIC. I couldn't beat. That's how bad I am of a gamer.
yeah, I'm the exact same way. I have like my friends are all good at. I'm so bad. I mean, I can get addicted to like the random phone puzzle game that have like the really great feedback loops, just like anyone else. But if there's any complexity to a video game, I'm out. And I just like I tend to like get into it for a little while. To me, programming is kind of the game. Like I always found that like puzzle. You just like go into these like developer blackouts even early on where you're just like up way too late. My grandma got convinced by my uncle to buy you remember those like old CRT iMacs that were like colorful.
Yeah.
She was convinced to buy one of those because Mac was going to be so much easier for her, and she hated it. And I convinced her to give it to me, so I had that in my room, and so I was always like working on this old Mac and like Mac OS 8 and like pre OS X
So not
world.
Windows. You started sort
No,
of on the Mac side. Yeah.
yeah, and then I
Interesting.
hacked I hacked that to be a Linux computer. So I ended up installing Unix on that and Linux on that. No, my family's always been Mac. Yeah, always kind of had Macs around, so never a Windows guy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had your own computer. You have siblings? Maybe you have siblings because you got the
I have
computer in
one
your room
one younger
pretty
one
quick.
younger brother. One younger brother, yeah.
So you didn't have to compete for the computer at that point.
No, we had like all families, they had like the gateway in the living room, but then as soon as I convinced my grandma to give me that iMac. That's what they're called. Yeah, they were iMacs. So see, they're like the original
Yeah.
iMac. Yeah. Um, it went into my room and that was like I lived on that thing.
You're wishing that you took care of it now, right? And you still
Oh,
had one.
yeah, 100%. It was purple and I hated that it was purple because it was like a not a it was a girly color or whatever, but I now I don't think I would care. I think it would be really fun to have on a shelf and
It would be amazing, even if it could. So my first real computer was a K Pro 2
okay.
CP/M operating system. It was considered portable because you could pick it up. I mean, it wasn't like a laptop. I mean, maybe it weighed like 20 pounds. I don't even know what it weighed. Anyway, I took real good care of it. But at some point, you turn it off because you get the next machine. and it
exactly.
just sort of goes, right? Like I don't need this anymore, throw it away. Even though it hurt to throw it away. Now I'm
Yep.
wishing I hadn't done that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but these CRT iMacs had a handle on them. They were like sold as
Oh,
portable
they
as well.
did.
Yeah,
Okay.
they had a handle on the top. It was like lugging around
It's like a
full
piece of
on.
luggage.
It really was like a carry-on. It was
I grew
crazy.
up in New York and they had a K Pro users group. I'm like 1985 or something. Like I'm like sophomore in high school. And I remember walking in with my K Pro 2, like the luggage. Everybody had one, which at the time was amazing to me. But I remember walking into this user group with the thing. It was really cool.
Yeah, where I grew up, I was like the only kid with a computer. And then I got in high school, I worked my butt off. And I bought myself a MacBook, the white like
Mm.
huge MacBooks. And I remember arguing with my teachers in high school that I wanted to take notes on my laptop versus on pen and paper, which was like such a foreign concept to them. Like, you can't have a laptop in class. How are you going to use it? And now I think if you showed up with pen and paper to a class, people think you were a weirdo.
No, the
Um,
two kids I have in school right now, they get assigned laptops. Like
yeah, it's crazy.
everything's laptop now. Everything is. One of them was writing something for a half an hour, and I said, "Why are you not doing that in a Google Doc? What are you going to do if you lose it?" And then they showed me a little button to save it. But I mean, the UIs are horrible, dude. Like the companies that figured out how to get into the schools with this really bad software, like hit home runs.
And they just milk those probably
Oh my
10-year
god,
contracts or something like that.
horrible software. Like if you ever saw it, if you haven't seen it, you'd just be shaking your head.
I have not. I have three kids, but they're not in the digital phase of their life yet. So
What were you doing for work in order to be able to afford? Because back then these machines weren't cheap. You're spending a couple grand
yeah,
or close to it.
I worked at a small Mexican restaurant in Norman called Pepe Delgado's, which was awesome. You know, just being like a busboy, and then I would sell peaches. So I would go down to southern Oklahoma, and there's a whole bunch of peach kind of farms down there, and I'd buy cases and cases of peaches, and I set up a roadside stand by
How did you
a
find the demand for that? Okay, time out. You
okay.
woke up one morning and said, "You know what? I'm going to go drive down, buy 2 bushels."
Uh,
Like,
so my granddad actually was like, "You should do this." He was like telling me like, because he would always go down to Southern Oklahoma and buy like 2 cases of peaches and then like bring them to his office and stuff. And his office was right on a highway entrance to I-35 that would back up like crazy. And he was like, you should go sell peaches. So he had like a pull through driveway to his office building, and so I set up a stand there. He was like, "You should set up a stand here. I'll help you. You will drive down there." He gave me the first set of startup cash I need to buy my first set of peaches. And then I set up a stand, you know, cardboard sign propped against like a, you know, folding table with like some shade, and all these cars would get backed up so people would pull in on their way, you know, to or from work and buy cases of peaches from
you're
me.
kidding me. So you made a little money selling
I made
peaches.
pretty decent money, like more money than a high schooler should make. Uh,
Okay, time out. I mean, we're talking like 2004 here, right? But I, I'm just curious. You sell, I guess you got 100% markup on every peach that you were buying at least
more, yeah.
more. Wow. So how much are you selling a peach for? Like
God, I
a
don't
dollar?
remember.
But I couldn't be more than a
Like
buck,
fifty
right?
cents a pop or something like that. You 50 cents to
Okay.
a dollar a peach, but you would always try to sell them in like you know, you'd have like a paper bag and you'd fill the paper bag and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, yeah.
that bag is $5, or you can buy a box and that box is $15 or something like that. Uh, yeah.
But you how long did you do that for? Was that like a year, 1 year of school, or like that's
I would do
interesting to
it
me.
I would do it all through the like summer peach season. For
Uh,
2 summers. And then I got shut down by the police because I didn't have a business license, actually.
you kidding me? So somebody reported you. Somebody
Someone in
reported
the
you.
police came and told me that, asked me if I had a business license. I was like, I'm 16. Like, do I? And and they told
You
me
were
I couldn't do it.
killing
They told me I
you were
couldn't do it
killing the
anymore.
local grocer, dude.
Clearly, they did not
You were
like that.
dude, this is like daytime TV stuff now. Like all the TV shows that I'm watching on Max, and it's like White Lotus stuff almost. And you were
It
hurting
was
somebody's business, man.
I
No,
must I must have been. I mean, it was super fun, and I mean it's hot. Oklahoma summers, you're out there, but it was super fun, and that was really the start. Yeah, everybody says that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. But ever
wow,
since then, it was so fun because I would just make. You were making your own money, setting your own hours. You knew if you weren't there, you weren't making money. If you were, you were. Um, yeah, that was it.
that's awesome, dude. Were you
It was
like
fun.
sad? You must have been a little sad or
I
mad or
was
just like
I
whatever.
was furious. I was like, I think I went to like the city council meeting and was like, why can't I do this? And like, the startup. Then it's like a zoning issue. You can't sell that. It's like it's
Yeah,
essentially a lemonade stand. You see these stories about like kids getting shut down because they have a lemonade stand. I mean, I was doing more money than like the corner lemonade stand, but it was. I think it was silly. Um,
yeah, no, it's definitely so. It's I call these like they're bored people. They're people that are just bored,
yeah,
yet comfortable. They have nothing else to do. So these things happen in the U.S. You know.
yep. I think they happen. My wife's German, and I hear stories like this in Germany, but they're very bureaucratic group too. So maybe it's those two places.
So
Um,
so in high school, you're tinkering with the computer, obviously, but when you're about to graduate, like, what's the thought? I mean, back then the thought was college, probably, right? Like, what other options?
yeah. So college was like the natural next step. I was never sure I wanted to go to college. I did eventually graduate. I went to a small college. So right after high school, I went to a small college in Florida called Eckerd, and they're
Where is
like in
that in Florida?
St. Pete.
Oh, in St.
Um,
Pete. Okay.
it's this like little liberal arts school, awesome experience. And I went there. I wanted to be a marine biologist, and so uh, I back in
Uh, wait,
pre
time
high
out a
school,
second.
I was a
Yeah.
scuba diver too, and so I was
Okay.
like,
Thank you. Okay.
um, I always loved the water, and my parents moved me to Oklahoma against my will. Grew up there, and
But there's no water in Oklahoma, is there?
there are a lot of lakes, and we would dive the lakes in like
Okay.
murky red water. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, a silly story, but I wrote Patty. They were this like, I don't know if you're a diver, but Patty is this dive certification body. So they certify people to be allowed to dive and make sure they're competent and all that stuff. And at the time, you had to be 13 to dive. And I really wanted to dive my family was going to Hawaii or something like that. I really wanted to go diving in Hawaii when I was 12. So I wrote them this long letter saying how they should make an exception for me. And they did. So at one point, I was like the youngest scuba diver in the US. And then I got to do some pretty cool stuff because of that.
They
But
gave
then
you a they gave
an
you a
ex-
card or something?
Yeah, they essentially said that we'll allow you to do the class and then get certified so you can go dive even though you're not 13 yet. Um,
Yeah, but I would have thought if you came to me with this paper or something, I would have said, "Nice job printing this out." I
I
mean,
think maybe people were more trusting. I don't remember it being really burdensome after I got after I couldn't like ChatGPT generate my permission slip at the time, you know.
but you think of like today, right? If you some 12-year-old gave me this, I would have been like,
100%.
"Get the hell out of here, kid."
I think well, yeah, I don't think the exception could have been made. So much stuff is like done via like rule books and like software now. I don't even know if the exception is possible. Like I don't know. This was totally tangential to high school, but I used to be able to talk my way into first class all the time on airplanes because like the gate agents could just like, you know, get you in. And now it's all based on status and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's all algorithmic. And so there was room in the world at the time for like humanity and exception to a lot of these things.
No,
It was cool.
but that's why we have it, Austin, because you kept, manipulating the gate agent, and we can't have Austin doing that.
It's too bad too. It's too bad. Well, you just have to figure out different ways to manipulate now, I guess.
Got to
Um,
hack into the system and change your status.
exactly.
That's it, man. So,
Y-
so you thought with the scuba diving and everything that you wanted to be a marine biologist. So you sought out universities, I guess, on the water, like this one in St. Pete, and got accepted there.
Yep. Started
That had to
there.
be exciting, dude. I
It
mean,
was
you're
awesome.
18, you're going to Florida, it's warm.
But yeah, it was awesome. It was great. The school was great. The school is literally on the beach. So it has its own whole beachfront campus. It's one of the top marine sciences schools in the country. Um, I was super into it, and then I realized that uh, I mean I just didn't want to do school, so I dropped out.
How many
Um,
years did it take for you to say that I just didn't want to be at school?
1.5
Like,
semesters.
so you did your first year, you did okay,
Yeah, I
and
didn't do
then
okay. I did pretty bad, but I
oh,
was
okay.
I was there, physically present at college.
There's a lot of distractions, dude, for somebody who just sort of shows up. I mean, there's distractions anyway being out of your house for the first year, but a lot of things to do in Florida other than go to class. So, but your parents must have been on you when they saw your grades first couple
They
semesters,
were
right?
on me. And then when I dropped out, they essentially said, "Hey, we'll help support you as long as you're in school. As long as you're not, it's on you."
Did you go back home when you didn't start your
So I went
fourth
back
sem?
home for a minute. Then I went and spent like 6 weeks doing wolf. I don't know if you've heard of wolfing, which is like working on organic farms. It's a network of organic farms where you can kind of bum around, and they give you room and board as long as you help
That's in
work.
Oklahoma.
I did that in Hawaii for like 6 or 8 weeks, and then I came back and worked in
I have never
restaurants in
heard of
Norman.
that. Wait a second. So I've never heard of this program. Is that still something that happens?
Oh yeah, totally.
I-
Yeah,
I'm going
wolf.
to say something really ignorant, Austin, but I think like down in Homestead here in Florida, like migrant, sort of like you're in the fields picking tomatoes and stuff like
Essentially.
that.
Yeah, you're like out helping on. I mean, there's all the farms I worked. I was only in Hawaii when I did it, and you're in like they're all smaller farms, but it's like yeah, people have farms. You volunteer your hours, and
So you don't get
they
paid, you just get room, you
correct. You
get
get room and
food,
food, and then you hang out with a whole bunch of people that are also doing that, and it's kind of like
but you don't
a
need anything else, I guess.
exactly. Yeah,
What did
exactly.
your parents say? If one of my kids said, I'm going to go wolf it down in Hawaii, I'd be like, okay, I guess. Like,
I think that was essentially my parents' reaction. Okay, like we'll see how long this lasts for you. And so I did it for a little while, came home, stayed on my mom's couch for a little while, and then I left. She kicked me out, and I went to not like in any rude way, just like, hey, you got to get off my couch and go figure something out. So I
I'm
went,
100% behind that. I mean, you must
yeah,
look back now and say you were right, mom. Like,
yeah,
you can't be lounging
yep,
around every day.
yep. And
That's
so
100%.
I enrolled in the University of Oklahoma, and was like, I'm going to go back to school because then at least my parents will start paying for some stuff for me. That didn't work for me, so I dropped out of that in less than a semester
I was
and
going to
started
say to you, you didn't really want to be there. You were just,
no looking for. I
yeah,
was
yeah,
looking for a
no, that,
bailout.
yeah, that wasn't going to last.
No, it did not.
No.
Worked in restaurants for a
So wait a second.
bit.
So
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah.
2006, you graduate. You did a year and a half. So now we're like end of 2007. 2008, you go to Hawaii, do some wolfing, you do some restaurants. So where are we? About 2010 now? And you're still
No, a
trying to
little.
figure it out?
So I went back to college in 2000. Yeah, 2010, I think.
Okay.
And so I had been working in restaurants, and then the my dad had moved to Colorado, um, and was like, "Hey, if you come to Colorado, you can live at my house. You just have to have a full-time job." And I was like, "Great." He was living in Aspen, and so I was like, "I could come live in Aspen. I could ski all the time. I'll get a job at a hotel that gives me a ski pass." So I did that, and so I skied a bunch. And then I had a friend back from Eckerd. She called me and said, "Hey, I'm performing in a school play. I want you to come see me." So I went out and saw her and decided at that time I wanted to go back to college. And so I re-enrolled back
For the
at
third
Eckerd.
time.
Yep. But
Okay,
I
time
wanted to
out.
go. I wanted to go
Okay.
at that point. So then
Time
I
out. Time
finished.
out.
I finished. All right, cool, cool, cool.
Wait, time out. Time out. Time out.
All right.
First of all, I love your parents because they're just like me with the kids, right? Like, you don't have to figure out who you're going to be at 22. You just, you got to be productive at some level.
Yep.
And,
That was
and,
essentially their
and,
job.
and that's fine. And I think that's fair at that age. But what's super interesting to me is third time the charm. What did you see when you went back to St. Pete this time around that got your head in the right place in terms of education?
Computer science. I started programming a bunch, like while I was working at these hotels in Aspen. I was like building websites. I was writing real software. Um,
On your
and I
own, or you found things to
on my own. I was I mean,
okay.
I was selling websites and stuff like that. And
Tell me about how you got your first gigs, because somebody must have came to you and said, I need a website, and you're like, I can do that.
how did I get my first set of gigs? I just like through talking about being able to build websites with like other little businesses around Aspen, actually, and like
Okay. Yeah.
and they're like, okay, this kid can build me one, and I had no idea how to price them, right? So I was like, yeah, I'll put one together for you for a few grand, and they're like, great, do it. And at
You
the
got a few
time,
grand, not even
yeah, it
500 bucks. You got a couple grand.
was
That's not
Aspen,
bad. Oh,
So
people got money.
yeah, and then I went back for computer science. Like, so I started back in college saying I'm going to enroll in, comp sci 101. I'd already taught myself a significant amount of Java, and all of my comp sci was Java, so I kind of like rode that for a long time, and that was
No,
awesome.
why
And I
not?
graduated with that.
Why not a boot camp at that point? Why
They didn't
go
really
finish?
exist.
They didn't back in 2000. This would have been 2010, 11. Yeah, I guess the Ruby. I don't know. This is I was
Ruby was a little later. It was
uh,
like 20, yeah, it's close to around then. They didn't really exist. They weren't there yet.
okay,
Um, yeah, they weren't quite there, or they just weren't in my sphere. Like the answer was
but you didn't have to
college.
do all 4 years. You were able to kind of pick up where you left off and change.
Essentially 2 years more.
Okay,
And I speed ran it a little bit. I actually wanted to be there. I enjoyed it. My grades were good. Um,
you must have
like
been working at the same time.
I didn't. So my parents were, as long as I was at school and
Nice.
doing well, that was my job. They were like, "That's your job."
That's
Um,
fair. So
and
that
so I
was
did
good.
that. Yep, and that was great.
So then you finished your degree in 2012.
Yep,
Okay.
I did. Yeah, I graduated December of 2011 or
So
so.
now what? You want to stay in Florida? You want to get a job? You don't care
So
where you are?
I did work at the end. I got an internship at a little Ruby shop in St. Pete doing like Ruby on Rails websites. It was like this, I mean, it was awesome. I got the job. I hope they never hear this. I mean, if they do, it's been long enough. But there was a career fair and they're there, and most of the career fair stuff is, kind of standard, you know, banks and stuff. And there was this little local Ruby shop, and they asked me if I knew Ruby. Like a good entrepreneurial college kid, I said yes, I did because I had done a week of Ruby in a programming languages class like a year ago, and they said, "Cool,
Fake it
come
till
in
you
for an
make it.
yep, fake it till you make it." So I said, "Come in for an interview," and so I bought I think it was Obi Fernandez's original like Ruby book and Rails book, and like taught myself over the course of a week enough to get through an interview with them, and they hired me. And then so then I was doing an internship there, and it was awesome. Great internship, great little company. It was
But
really
you're out
just
of
like,
school.
no,
You graduated.
I was in school
Oh,
at the
it's
time.
the
So this was like at the
okay.
very end, like last semester
Okay.
of school,
Oh, that's
essentially.
fair. That's fair. Okay.
This little shop had kind of bit off a project a little bigger than they could chew. It was building a pretty large Rails app to help, match tennis players. So like if I want to, do like pick up tennis games in my community, how do I find people that are of equal skill level? And they partnered with so we ended up partnering with a larger, kind of more notable Ruby shop called HashRocket, which was out of Jackson. There was a bunch of like the original Ruby gurus. So I don't know how nerdy your audience is and how Ruby oriented they are,
They'll
but like,
be programmers. Yeah, they'll know
cool,
this stuff.
cool. So HashRocket was started by Obi. It had like Desi McAdam and T Pope. T Pope was like, writing all the Vim scripts at the time. And um, I got to like pair program with all of them in my like last
Wow.
semester of school. And so I was going to graduate, and I was kind of begging them to give me a job, and they were like, like we can't really hire you because of this other stuff unless you get permission. And Desi, who's a good friend, she and I were doing like a 2 a.m. deploy, and she was like, who you should talk to is you should talk to Rob Me. And so Rob Me was the CEO and founder of a company called Pivotal Labs. And I was like, oh, I know
Tiny
Pivotal.
company.
Yeah.
Yeah, tiny
So
company.
They were at the time. I think they were like 100 people when I interviewed there, maybe a little more. But like, um, she's like, I just got, I stayed on his couch. I was in San Francisco at a conference. He would love you, and so I'd love for you to interview there. Like, so I interviewed with Rob, and um, he told me that he gave me a job at their brand new blossoming Boulder office. So he moved me to Boulder, and I got to start working at Pivotal Labs pre any acquisition. So we were a small, small mid-sized Ruby shop at the time, and
What were
then
you working on? What part of the tech at that time were you working on? You started on the platform side?
Here at Ardan Labs, we believe in empowering companies to reach their full potential through innovative technology solutions. Trusted by small startups and Fortune 500 companies alike, we specialize in high-performance software consulting, training, staffing, development, and now AI. With over 14 years of experience, Ardan Labs has trained over 30,000 engineers and served over 1,000 companies worldwide. Whether you're mastering Go, Rust, Kubernetes, Terraform, or blockchain, we're your strategic partner for performance-grade solutions. Let's elevate your tech journey together. Reach out to Ardan Labs today.
so this was before Pivotal had platform or anything. So Pivotal Labs was
Okay.
truly like a XP consulting company. So we were like pair programming. My first project was building out like a healthcare platform for hemophiliacs, so people who have clotting problems, and it was like a whole EMR for them, or ERM, whatever.
Yeah, electronic medical
Yeah,
records.
EMR. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like pairing, test-driven development, you know, 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, you know, uh, true XP shop. And then EMC bought Pivotal while I was there, and that's when the platform got added, and we did Cloud Foundry and a bunch of other stuff. So in the very beginning, I was a consultant, and I've essentially stayed in consulting my whole life.
So
Um,
what year was it that you started there then? It would have been 2015,
12, 2012,
2012.
I went right after
Okay.
college.
Right after
Uh,
college. And how long did
but
you stay there?
7 years.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah, it was
I
a
mean, in
really long
today's
time.
standards, in today's standards, it's a long time.
I did a lot of different things. So I was working in Boulder as a dev, and I got the opportunity to open their Chicago office. So Pivotal moved me to Chicago, and I was the general manager of their Chicago branch. We were growing, you know, Pivotal was growing consultative offices, so not platform offices, but consulting offices all over the world. And Chicago ended up being one of the largest ones. And so
But as a
was just,
GM, you walked away from the tech at that point. You're sort
you
of
know,
managing.
a little bit. It was managing the business. So like I've always been a little entrepreneurial, and so what I saw from the GM position was I could like the way Pivotal structured an office and was it was essentially like your own little business. You reported back some P&L statistics to the mothership, but how you sold, the connections you built, like all that was kind of up to you. And so it was a way for me to essentially go through an entrepreneurial boot camp um, with the backstop of a pretty reputable brand and a pretty reasonable salary.
But you had to grow the business in Chicago, or you were able to hire
Yep,
people to do that. Like, talk a little
I
bit.
had to
That's
grow it.
really hard to do, man. I mean, that's not easy.
Yeah, so we got to, yeah, like before we opened the office, I was flying out and trying to sell our first customer. For Pivotal was this restaurant group called Let Us Entertain You, selling with them, helping them build their first app. They coincidentally were the first customer for Focused as well. So I poached them from Pivotal and brought them to me. Yeah, and then we, built the business, hired an enterprise sales team, grew that, and that office grew and was incredible.
I guess it was also nice that you're starting with a company that one had a reputation and had funding to be able to sort of go after that, right? You need money to make money at the end of the day.
You do. And I think one of the things I totally undervalued when I started Focused was how powerful like a reputation, like a brand's reputation is. Like Focused, a lot of my reputation is what's helped build the company to where it is. But the like, the cold outreach, my reputation doesn't help with that. And where a $1 billion backed company can do really well because they just exist they've sponsored every conference, they're in every trade publication, they've talked at everything. Like they just have a corpus of recognizability that
Well,
makes them really
they
powerful.
also, whether they're good or bad at what they do, they're large enough where anybody feels comfortable hiring them.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's huge too. Because Ardan Labs is a company I started. I would say the same thing, December 2010, but I always say January 2011. Um, right? And we have a niche in the Go programming language. We have a niche in Rust. We don't, right? We help companies do all that. But it's the same thing, right? Like early on, it's very hard to get a company to want to hire you when you're small because you got to convince them that you're not going to disappear tomorrow and that you're going to, and that takes time and right and growth. And so,
Yeah, and I've always wondered, like, I mean, it's kind of interesting talking at like the reputation transfers from the founder to the brand eventually. And like, and I think that's the difference between the agencies that that have always been kind of 20 to 30 people. Like the founder never was able to transfer the reputation. And then the ones that can grow and feel a little more perennial. So they can survive past a founder could maybe go back to being a technologist versus a founder, that kind of stuff. Um,
I'm exactly in the same space right now, right? My company is built on my reputation
yep,
in Go, right?
yep,
And so I've been struggling for a couple of years, like waiting for the day where I don't have to exist and the company can continue to grow without me. My game plan is Rust because I don't do anything in the Rust world. I do
yeah.
everything in the Go world, right? And so one plan is if you could switch your revenue to where Rust is generating more than Go, then I could walk away. And now the company has a reputation beyond just, say, one human being's ability to be out in the world and do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, that feels reasonable. I've been thinking about this a lot too, because like focus keeps kind of bouncing against the top of what I can sell reputationally, and it feels like like a false summit. What people buy from people, like that's why they're buying from you, from Go. They're buying from me because of my reputation and like the work I've done in the past. It's like, how do I start to prop up a handful of other people in my company as like highly technical, credible sellers? This is the question I've always had is like, what is the product demo for an agency? And like, you're the product demo if you're the Go guy, right? Like, you're the product demo, and I'm the product demo for Focused. So how do I create more product demos that like people can see, they build trust in, and then they eventually buy from? And we've been running this strategy now for like 6 months, and it's starting to feel like it might be fruitful. It's always a little scary though, getting your hands kind of off the reins a little bit and it not being from you and all that stuff.
Yeah. We do it through, we're at every conference. We do workshops at every conference. We're on stage at every conference. We publish more content than you can probably imagine, text, video, all that, right? You're trying to constantly be out there showing that you're an expert in some space. This is our niche, right? And these are the people that do it. And so people want to work with us because of all the things that you said, right? But it's about, I'm trying now to get another two people there where perception, it's all perception for anybody that's listening to this. Not as reality, it's perception, but get people at a level where when they think about Bill Kennedy, they think about Herbert, they feel like they're at the same level for
Yep.
that niche. It's a
Yeah.
marathon. It's not a sprint. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and I feel like growing agencies, uh, unlike product companies, especially ones that are highly oriented towards like a value-based sale versus like a commodity dev service-based sale. Organic growth, it's really hard to escape an organic growth path and get like the exponential growth curve that you would see in a product company. Your trust is built on like the reputation of a few individuals in your agency, and it takes a long time to break out of that.
I think the other challenges in this type of business, right? We're providing services to companies. We're not, at least we're not building our own product, though we've always wanted to build a product. Sometimes that's not easy to identify. Um, Again, and there's no VC money involved, right? You're growing it
Right.
organically. Is like the best and worst thing that can happen to you is you land a deal and they want 20 people overnight. because you got to pay those people before you get paid. I mean, right?
I
Like,
Yeah, it's crazy. I went through a really big growth spurt kind of at one point, and I was like doing the math on like, my God, I'm going to go broke because I'm growing so fast. Like I literally am going to run out of cash. And all this is like well spoken for, but we had big customers, and these some of the biggest customers were like, I'm signing stuff just to get work, and then I realized like signing a net 90 deal is like putting a nail in a coffin. And I'm like, oh my
I know,
God, like
dude. Nobody
I'm
sees that,
I'm
right?
going a quarter, I'm going a quarter before I get paid on this. And that's assuming they pay on time.
I know. And then you got to play. I mean, we're talking about all this, probably shouldn't be, but then you got to play games about how quickly you give them those 20 people because of
Yep.
that,
Yep.
right? And not make it, let them know that you're doing it because you're worried about cash flow. No, it's interesting, dude. It's super interesting.
One thing, I'm curious your experience here, but like I one of the things I love about selling and like having my agency and is I build these incredible relationships. So I at some point when I have someone sign up for 20, like I did, uh, I could actually say those words like, you know, we're here, I'm going to hire, but I'm going to have to hire these people for you. Like they're not I don't have a bench of 20. And so like, we're going to go through some maybe hiring pain. There could be some, bad apples that we get in. We need to have that conversation. And then like, this is going to create a really strong, like undue burden. And actually one partner I had was so good. She's just incredible. They signed a huge contract for a year with me and then prepaid the whole year.
Wow.
And so they just, I mean, like literally biggest wire I've ever seen in my life just hit my bank account, and they were like, "Go grow." Like, so they were
That's
essentially
beautiful.
making an investment back in us, and it was because I had the courage to kind of expose where they were gonna put pressure on my cracks, and then they were such good partners. I mean, just an incredible partner, kind of through the growth.
Yeah, no, I think it's the best policies, honesty, and I believe in karma, like to the full extent, right? Totally the full extent. Um, but yeah, all those things that you're talking about are real. My favorite story is we signed with a really big company and they were like, "You need insurance at this level." And I started laughing because I'm like, "We don't make enough money to get a policy this big." And then I was nervous when I said it
Yep.
because now it's like, now you're not going to do business with me because I'm not big enough. They did, but those are the things that scared me that day.
I had the exact same experience. We signed with a big automaker, and the automaker had this like outrageous insurance requirements in their MSA, and they essentially said like, if you can't, we don't take red lines to our MSAs. Like they are what they are, and if you don't want to
MSA
do it,
is the master service
yeah,
agreement
yeah.
for everybody that's listening.
And they were like, if you don't want to figure it out, then the next guy down the, kind of ringing our phone will. So like, good luck. And so I was like, calling insurance agencies, and I had one insurance agent say, what you're doing is you're asking me to insure a Kia like a Ferrari. Like you guys, like, like you guys aren't worth this level of insurance. No one, but I found someone creative enough to get it done, and it cost an astronomical amount, and we were able to do it, and then we grew with that too. Like, but I
Yeah.
remember you're trying to insure a Kia like a Ferrari, and I was like, I mean, yeah.
It's funny, right? The when you have that growth has to happen in steps. It can't be, there's no
Mhm.
hockey stick, right? Unless
No.
you're looking to take somebody's money, which you don't want to do. It's got to be. But these are funny. I guess everybody at some level, once you're 8+ years in, you're gonna, you hit these walls,
Yep.
which are really interesting.
Yeah,
So,
it is fun. It's really fun.
well, I have a sales guy that can sell ice to the Eskimos. Thank God. I am not a salesperson. Like, I don't like rejection. Where
Hmm.
you need somebody like Miguel, where if you say no to him, he laughs. He goes, "Okay, we'll talk tomorrow."
Yeah.
Right? Right? I'm
I'm
not that guy. You say no to me, I'm like, I don't want to bother you.
yeah. I'm probably a little in between. I like to I mean, I just sell by being passionate about what I like. And then it seems like we've been able to generate a lot of clients who are also passionate about similar things, high quality software, developer efficiency, good teams working together, um, the nuance of what good code is versus the story points that good codes create. good code creates
So,
kind of thing.
so this is what's interesting to me about like the difference here, right? I started at ground zero in terms of reputation, clients. We got one client, right? We had them for a long time, which was great. We don't have them anymore. But sort of building that reputation from scratch, which I did through writing books, talks, workshops, technical stuff, building that reputation. And that took years. In fact, COVID completely destroyed almost everything for me
Mhm.
because I had to disappear for 2 years. And now suddenly you come back and there's another million developers, let's say, that are now using this, right? And they don't know who you are.
Right.
And like all that work you've done, kind of you have to start over. But when I hear your story, it's like you you were in Pivotal, you learned, right, with the backing of Pivotal, how to build one of these companies. And then my guess is at some point, and I'd like you to tell that story, you decide that I don't want to do this with Pivotal anymore. I want to do it on my own. So tell me that story and how you do that. And then sort of what you thought was going to happen in terms of being able to carry that over and maybe didn't, or what did happen.
Yeah. So at Pivotal, I was always deeply involved in the sales process, even as we built out a team of reps. Like it was my office, I was accountable to the revenues, the margins of the office, all that kind of stuff. And so it was really important. And so I had really close relationships with all of our customers. And I always wanted to do something on my own. I never really said I want to create my own agency. Um, but at one point, Pivotal really started leaning into the platform, and that's what had me leave. So the I liked the services, and all of a sudden, I stopped being accountable towards like revenues and margins, and was accountable towards like selling the platform. So my bonuses changed, my structures changed. I was like, it's just not the same customer relationship. I feel like sometimes I'm like forcing a sale that doesn't fit versus, services is awesome because you understand you're truly trying to like be empathetic. I need to understand what you want to build, and then I want to build that for you and like help you realize something. Versus like, here's a product, let me kind of figure out how I can cram this, square peg
Yeah.
through a round hole. And
See,
so
that's
I quit.
totally fair because when I think Pivotal, I think platform, like you saw early on in this conversation. I
Yeah.
don't remember Pivotal as being a consultancy in a sense. I think of them as a
Which is so
dev
funny because
platform.
Pivotal to me was a consultancy, and there was a huge part of it. But as Pivotal grew, went through a handful of different kind of mega billionaire owners and that kind of stuff. They always were trying to minimize services revenue towards against platform revenue because the ultimate goal was an IPO, and so the multiples on a product, a SaaS product, subscription revenue, SaaS product, B2B is way better than like a services company. And so they were always pushing that. So eventually it just like the Pivotal put their money where their mouth was and stopped paying on all the services stuff and started really pushing that. So I quit. And I went to Braintree. And so I ran an engineering department at Braintree. It was awesome. I loved it. And Braintree as a whole, kind of their founding engineering team were from ThoughtWorks. And so they did pair programming and were super passionate about XP and TDD and all these other things I loved.
When you
And then
say
their
XP, what does that stand for? Because that
extreme programming, like Kent Beck's
okay
extreme programming. It's like pair programming, small stories, test-driven development, iterations, not sprints, like that kind of stuff. Um,
feels like what I'm doing every day. It sounds
yeah,
good to me.
there in the book, I think it's in XP Explained or one of the other books about it, but in the book they say essentially if you gave a whole bunch of developers a backlog and like no management, they would create XP. Um, like it is a very natural way to write software. The So while I was at Braintree, I saw a really big need for like more kind of iteration and like kind of continuous deployment, communication, good code in the infrastructure space. And so I left Braintree to start focused, uh, really to be like a high-end DevOps consulting company. Because at the time, like Terraform was really popping off, CDK was really popping off, cloud was finally like ubiquitous, and I was like, you could take all this like good agile um, philosophy and apply it to infrastructure and ops teams, and like instead of having the like bash operator from hell, racking and stacking servers. And so that was Focus's original intent. And as we grew, everybody was asking for more and more. My early customers were like, well, you're doing some of our ops work. Can you do some of our dev work too? And so I grew a dev team and then
Yeah,
eventually
you're
grew
not
a
going to
design
say
team.
no. You're not
Right.
going to
And
say
I did.
no to anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I grew a design team to follow. So that was kind of um, and when I started Focused, I
Who
started
was
with
your first customer? Hold on a second. How
yeah,
did you?
yeah.
That first customer is everything, right? Like, you can't start unless you have a customer. In all reality, so
Yeah.
what was
Um,
the first? Like, yeah, how did you acquire that?
my first like of reasonable size customers. We had one like 10K customer that was like a friend of a friend. And we did the deal because we were like, we should kind of iron out the like, how do you write a statement of work pipes and like, get all that send an invoice. And so it was really small project that I lost money on at the end of the day. The first real customer was the company Let Us Entertain You. So they're a restaurant group, big restaurant group in Chicago. They own a bunch of spots, and they had been a Pivotal customer for a long time, and I had built up a really strong relationship with their CMO.
Pivotal didn't want them anyway.
Essentially, no, they didn't want them, and they didn't really want Pivotal either, because every time they talked to Pivotal would be like, "Well, do you want to buy Cloud Foundry?" And so, um, I kind of came in, and I remember I met with their CMO and their CTO at the time at breakfast. uh, we sat down at a restaurant in Chicago called Beatrix, and we're, 7 a.m. meeting, and I'm like, hey, I'm starting my own dev shop, and like, if you guys, I'd love to let you, figure out how we could work together, and we've always enjoyed working together in the past, and they kind of held their cards close, and they're like, yeah, that's great, like, we'll let you know if we have anything, um, and then literally the next day I get a call from the CTO and he goes, "Hey, we have a project. We'd love to like see if you want to bid on." And so we bid on it, and he's like, we win it." And uh, as soon as we win it, I didn't want to tell him this before. I was like, like there's no way we can deliver this with like our current like it's just me and my partner. So we're gonna have to hire some people. He's like, "Oh no, we fully expect that. Like we want you guys to hire." Um, and so then we started hiring some people, and then uh I had a handful of kind of other customers, and then our big breakout was with Hertz. So I had a previous contact from Pivotal who had been at who had moved to Hertz, and I had been talking to them for a long time. It took me over a year of talking to them, and eventually um, we found a small project at Hertz building out some uh, IoT software that connected like stolen vehicles with police systems so they could go recover stolen vehicles. And then that really opened up the doors for Focused.
Yeah. So when I went to your website before we started, I saw all the big company names. I saw the Hertz and Pods and all this, right? And then when
Mhm.
you told me that you started in 2018, my brain went, how the heck did Austin, right, within a scope of 6 years, essentially, get to that level of, because it's not easy to get that level of customer. We have a couple, right?
Right.
But we've been in business since 2011, right? So 14 years, right? I would argue. Let's say over 10 years it's taken to get there. And you got there much faster. So the thing that I'm always talking to Miguel about is relationships, 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 relationships. We're going to travel somewhere to strengthen relationships. We have to be a person. But here's an interesting, okay? So you had these relationships. You had really good relationships because people did want to have lunch and breakfast with you, and you were able to leverage that, and that's huge, right? Like,
Mhm.
now I can see that now and how you did that. Um, Now, here's what's something that's super interesting. We're having conversations where we want to be a company, no matter what, that always has that personal touch. I'm sure you're seeing this. There's more and more companies like ours that are trying to get into this AI world where we're going to use AI to help you find people faster, who are better, yada, 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 yada. And I'm just like, I don't think I want to be a company that's using AI to replace my conversation with that client.
No, and I don't either. We use a lot of AI. I mean, like it is a requirement of all of my staff, my team, my people that we are using AI everywhere. Like there is no doubt in my mind that it is a huge lever. But like AI is a force multiplier on like the human experiences. And I do not want to automate the human experience of consulting. And I think one of the things I've loved about my experience working in all these different restaurants, and from small Mexican to nice restaurants, is like when you're in services, like in that type of services, like it is all about cultivating like a guest experience. And AI, like that experience is part of when you engage with a consulting company too. Like, what is the experience you're going to get? How do you feel like taken care of, heard? How do I feel like I have a relationship with the right people at the firms to make sure the right decisions happen and actually do? The most when I see firms be really unsuccessful is they don't cultivate the relationship. And that relationship is really the product. And it's the relationship that's they, between me and the buyer. It's the relationship between the devs and the devs. It's the relationship kind of through the stack that exists that makes people say, like, this was a good experience. And then they refer.
Yeah,
So,
and for us, and I've told Miguel this, I don't need to be Accenture. I don't even want to be that big. I'm happy being fairly small because then I can have those personal if a client's having a problem, they know they can reach me within so many hours. I'm coming back to them and I'm jumping on top of it and we're going to take care of it one way or the other. Nobody has to worry about whether they can get in touch with Bill or Miguel in the next
yeah,
24 hours.
the only thing I've seen work that's different than that, and I struggle with this too, because like as the founder, it's your baby. Um, and the owner, it's like it's also your you know at the end of the day, it's like it's your pocketbook. So like if something goes wrong, it means that like I strongly believe that like owners eat last. And so the but at Pivotal, I had all these strong relationships, and I was not the founder and CEO of Pivotal, right? And so somehow that organization, that company, gave me the opportunity to build those relationships, that gave me the opportunity then to start Focused. um, while I wasn't the CEO. Like, I had bosses who had bosses who had bosses, and yet I still was able to cultivate strong experiences. And so it can scale. It can. I've seen it at least once.
No, no, it's awesome how you got to that level of getting the relationship. I don't care how people do it, but you got to get there in one form or another. But let me go back and ask you because you said everybody's got to use AI, and I'm assuming that's internally. Can you give me some examples outside of your devs using Copilot where sort of AI is being leveraged to make your people more efficient, I guess, or more productive, or whatever the word is?
I mean, yeah, the devs using Cursor, Copilot, that kind of stuff is an obvious one. Um, our design teams now start with their wireframing and mockups in tools like V0. And so like, how do I get faster into the prototype? Um, our marketing teams use it all the time. So how do I, you know, everything from simple like generation or ideation around marketing copy is a huge part of it. I also generation of assets, altering assets. It has allowed us to not hire um, another marketing person. It's allowed us to not hire other devs. Like, we're planning on doing a big event at the end of the year, kind of for in the Denver area, and like it's allowing us to move very fast without having to bring on more staff to manage and build that event. I see
Now,
our leadership.
not all these tools are free, right? Like
No, we
I
pay
don't
for
play
them
with
all.
Cursor. I don't do so. You didn't have to hire another dev. You didn't have to hire another marketing person. But and I don't know because I don't use the tooling. But is the cost of the tooling for all the people you have still half of what it would have cost to hire
Dramatically
another
less
dev?
less than
Okay.
half. Less than half. And I honestly think like even if it was the same expense now to go and experiment, iterate, like I want my devs and my team and my marketing to like, you know, be paying for Claude and OpenAI and Gemini and some random, marketing specific AI SaaS product and something else. And I want them experimenting with all of them. And eventually my goal is to cull that. But right now, there's like so much white space in the opportunity of these products that experimentation seems like the natural place to go. And if there's some cost in that research, that's fine with me, especially if I can see real return on like or potential return on efficiency or quality of life for people.
Yeah,
Um,
I see. I wanted to ask you how you're measuring that. If it's just subjective, like you just see it and feel it, or is there? How are you measuring that? Um, the team is
on on the dev
yeah
space,
better.
honestly, one manifestation in the dev space is that our estimates are going down. Like we are seeing ourselves quote projects at less time. And there's a little bit of fear. I mean, there's fear in the back of my head. Of course, I have to be doing this because if I'm not, someone else will. But like, it enters me into this like kind of sales death spiral. Because if my projects execute faster, and I'm pricing right now by the hour, meaning I'm doing less hours, means I have to, where I was able to sell one project, I now need to sell one and a half. Um, and so
There's
that gets
revenue. There's a
right,
revenue loss, right? So
huge
we,
revenue loss.
now this turns into an ethical situation. We're all going to be ethical, right? But but it's almost like I know I can do it faster, but last year we were selling the same product for X number of hours. So this is what the cost of it is, right? The fact that I can do it faster maybe shouldn't matter. Dude, I haven't even had these conversations yet with where we are at all.
We've been talking a ton about like even how we price. And so like, value oriented pricing versus time oriented pricing, um, getting more into like, yeah, not being
But you're
time and
doing more
materials.
projects. You're doing more See, we do at Arden, we, we do more staff augmentation
Yeah, we're
than we
less
do
retained
projects.
services. Last retained services. So the kind of the two goals I focused when I started it was DevOps, and then when I was hiring all these consultants at while I was at Braintree and working with different agencies and stuff like that, one of the things I always felt what was awkward was like once you hired someone, I felt like I would depend on them, and that was okay in some ways, and in other ways it's like, well, I don't want a dependency on a third party. I don't want to outsource like my architecture, my systems design. I want these people thinking about my projects in the shower, that kind of stuff. And so focused really a big part of I think what helped us get into Hertz was our model is to deprecate ourselves. So we enable our customers through installing like methodology. So whether it's how do you do pair programming or think about CI/CD or think about how you plan stories or test software, how do you make your dev teams more efficient? Uh, while delivering product. And then eventually we leave, but you get the efficiency gains of focused afterwards. And that to a company like a Hertz was like, oh, this is different than Accenture, who's already in our vendor list. And so like, if I put Accenture on this project, they're never going away. And with Focus, it's like, oh, they say they'll go away, so maybe actually they will. So that was what got us like some of those vendor lists early on. Um, and really where we've headed now is the same enablement play. So enable and deprecate, but we're enabling teams to use these AI tools like, you know, introducing, AI into a CI/CD flow. So it sees a failure of a test and maybe even commits a pull request before a dev even sees it that passes that test. And then a dev would go review the PR or something like that. But like why, like that could free up a whole cycle, or using Cursor or something like that.
Well, we have clients that want to hire after a certain amount of time. That's their strategy, right? They don't have time to find the right people. We can find the right people in this niche, and then they may decide, you know what, we want this person full time. We're like, if the person wants to go full time, it's like we have no problem with it, right? With the idea that you're trying to maintain a relationship, they're going to want another head. They
Yep. Yep.
come back to you, right?
Yeah, and so that's like I think that's a really honest model. And it's really similar. The only difference is like we really it's not like, hey, take our person. It's like we really want to give you the skills to where you don't even need to take our people. Like you feel good with the team you have. And so, you know, when an enterprise hires us, it's really like, hey, we're trying to move into, you know, a more modern stack, or we're trying to adopt continuous deployment. And in order to have good continuous deployment process, we need to have well-tested code. And in order to have well-tested code, we need to have well-architected code. In order to have well-architected code, we need to think about the way we cut features in the right way and talk about them and like plan. And so we come in and help with that whole process while delivering. So our people, most of the people at Focus Labs are developers. So we're
Yeah, I
developing, but
find
also
that
giving back.
interesting because I'm not getting these types of requests from my clients. My clients are in many ways either struggling to find the right people. They have product they want to build. They love working with us for two reasons. One, we do find them the best devs at the best price points based on their budgets, right? Like
Mhm.
we live in Miami, dude. We've got South America pretty well covered. You can find amazing developers in
Mhm.
Brazil, in Argentina. Like they're all there, right? It's just a matter of being able to access them, and we can do all that depending on where your budgets are. But I haven't had a client come to me and say, "We're trying to build out these processes. We have the team already. We just don't have this expertise. Can you come in and do this?" And then walk away. Like I've done some projects where we're going to build this out for you for a year and then you're going to take it over because they don't have the bandwidth. We've done that. Um, but some of the stuff you're talking about is interesting because I haven't seen that with where we are.
It's a lot of what we see. Although now that we are getting a substantial amount of inbound, the inbound feels more like, hey, we want you to just build a project for us. And where we win on these inbounds now seems to be where we're educating about not just, we're not a commodity. Like we deliver something a little bit more than just like a working app. If someone wants just a working app, then you know that they most features for lowest price is what they're making their buying decision on. And if someone is a engages in the conversation around like, as you build product and software, that becomes like a living, breathing part of your brand, your experience. It has to change, get upgraded. You're going to want to, and it will have to. So how do you build the process into your company to be truly like digital first? And that then is where we've been winning.
So
And with now the AI stuff is like, and now they're saying, so how do I not hire? So we have this new project. We would hire two more devs for it, but instead we want to use AI to make our four devs more efficient or our eight devs more efficient. And we say, well, we have some process for that too. Like, here's how you engage with these tools in a way that makes you not have to hire two. You can make eight worth 10 or 12.
what I'm hearing from you almost is in one form or another, you're starting to develop a product, whether it's a product you install or a product that you're through a process and policy, like you're really starting to develop a product that people can buy to help make their dev staff and everything else more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fairly convinced that like services companies are products. Like everybody has something that makes them special. And like, so your part of your product features is like, we're experts in Go and now becoming Rust, right? That's a feature that I don't have. Um, but I have a expertise in something else, right? And so like when people compare agencies, somebody's features might be like, we are willing to engage on part-time process, part-time a week, so 20 hours a week. And we don't engage at 20 hours a week. We're 40 hours focused on a
Right.
customer.
We are
And so
too.
like different features create different products. And then luckily, we're in a really diverse and exceptional world. So we all can find business based on what people's needs are at the time. Um,
Dude, there's enough work to share. Everybody that is even
yeah.
in competition with me in the Go community, whether it's training, I I share everybody what everybody's doing. Again, I believe in karma, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to stifle someone. And if they can outbid me or get the job, and it happens every once in a while, I'll call a friend. I go, "Did you get that training job at the New York Times?" It's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I got it." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Good for you, man." Obviously,
Yeah.
I wanted it, but good for you, right? Because to not be like that isn't gonna brings the I hate this idea of energy, but brings the wrong energy everywhere, dude.
I 100% agree. It's like uh even even with the AI stuff, I think like the amount of work is only increasing, not decreasing. And like to assume that we're playing a zero sum game in the amount of work in the world, I think is really short-sighted. The more we can convince companies to embrace software as part of like their core stack, the more they'll be successful and the more we will too. And like that is what agencies do.
So I don't want to get into
Digress.
politics, but I'm curious about your thoughts here without it getting political.
Okay, I'll try my best.
I don't know yet if I should be worried about the current state of the stock market because there's so much funding, right?
Hmm.
That's backed by the stock market in one form or another. And watching it start to go down, I have not seen a decrease in business yet. I have not seen a decrease in anything yet. But, and I don't have enough education here to know, but there's a part of me that's really worried that at some point, all this growth that we've seen since the election, because I've seen it,
Hmm.
is just going to stop, and then it's going to be back to what last year was. Last year was tough
Yeah, it was
in
brutal.
terms of it was brutal, right?
Yeah.
Everybody saw it. Anybody who survived last year was in good shape this year. Are you without getting political? Are you concerned at all with what you're seeing that we end up hitting the brakes on this economy and we're back to what we saw Q2 last year?
So when Q2 last year hit, or even like earlier, as like the zero interest went away, so zero kind of disappeared in 23 or 20, was it 23, 22, whatever it was. The first customer we lost was Wayfair, and Wayfair was way overvalued in the markets. And they did a big cut across the board, and we were part of that big cut. And it made us really reflect as a company on like how we sell and what how we get funded and stuff like that. So short answer is like, yeah, I'm afraid, but I think there's alpha to be found. Alpha being like, how do you outperform whatever is happening in the market, or in the meta for software development services and stuff like that. And all the projects I used to sell, pre the disappearance of zero interest, were all based on like a hope and a dream. A CEO, a board would be like, we need an app, we're willing to fund it. Eventually it'll pay itself back. Now, when we sell, AI driven development, or we sell a, loyalty app to a restaurant or something like that, we literally will build business case. You build a custom loyalty app for your restaurant, and what we've seen is a net revenue return of X. The app pays itself back in 2 years, based on customer retention data, all this other stuff. We're selling against a real return now, versus like
Budgets.
eh,
Yeah.
versus budgets and
Yeah. Okay.
hopes. And so a lot of our sales process, we're building business case for the
I love
customer to
that.
then go get that. And it's like, it's been really, it's been a really hard learning experience how to do that, because you don't have that data. And this is a place where AI is super helpful. Is like, when we first started this, we were spending hours and hours and hours and hours doing research and going through companies. And now with products like Deep Research, we can spend substantially less time getting really strong data. And Deep Research combs the web, summarizes stuff for us, but then it gives us an opportunity, a place to start that is 5, 10 steps ahead of where we would have started before, as we're building business case. And when I think
But
about price, go
but
ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. But that model still requires consumer confidence. People still have to want to go out and eat and buy
So
the shoes and
correct. But if we're selling efficiency, so we're selling by building this digital experience, this app, by making it so you can buy our product over a website rather than through our call center. And we say, if you can get X% of your sales to go through the website rather than the call center, you can save money on your call center by doing this, that. The app, then all of a sudden these things start to pay for themselves, right? And then the app, like, you can make a real business case where the the development of the product and the long-term maintenance of that product is funded by the savings or the revenue increase that the product itself created. And what was happening prior to zero interest, it was so cheap to get money, or the destruction of zero interest, and it was so easy to get money that like it would you you could fund any idea, right? And it didn't matter if they failed. Now there's a lot more upfront work that we're having to do in the sales process to show that like there is less risk. So the risk adjusted return of an app, we have to remove risk from the bidding process by
so
showing the business case for it.
okay. So if you could build the product fast enough, whatever that means, okay, let's say within 3 months or something, where you can get it deployed. What what pops in my head now is you turn around and you say, look, if you could get X% of sales going through this system that we're building, automation, reduced your current operating cost to this. Now, when the tariff comes in, you're at least say bare even, maybe slightly under. In other words, you don't have to raise the price of your products right now in the short term because we're delivering the cost savings, assuming that you haven't done this yet.
Sure. Like if it's a tariff or, just the cost of capital as a whole, or just the reduction of consumer spending, reduction in revenues, like however a company can find efficiencies, they're going to look for it. And they're doing a utilitarian decision around like what they have done versus what they could do. And of course, there's risk in the experiment. And so my job during the sales process, or our job during the sales process, is to help like alleviate and build confidence around the implementation of a new process, a new software, a new something. Um, and things like taxes, tariffs, they're tough, right? And they're going to change like the way people buy, but they're applied ubiquitously across the entire industry. So it is friction that everybody shipping something from Mexico in has to pay for. And so it ends up being it ends up being priced in across the board. Like it's not like one company is going to die. And so then you can build I feel like you can build your business case and help. So then how do you help that one company find its alpha against all these other companies that are paying the same tariff as them? And that is like, oh, we're going to reduce call center volume, or we're going to um, not hire five more devs and instead use AI to augment them, or we're going to hire five more devs, but we're going to work on what we would have spent 15 developers
So,
work on or
so
something.
let me ask you a question, Austin, for your perspective, because I think I'm not the company to do this. I don't think. I think you are. How do people know that they should even be talking to you about these things? Do you think in general companies know that they have these problems and there are solutions, or how does somebody know that I should be talking to Austin about this problem, even if I don't even recognize it yet?
God, I don't know. That's like the question that's the question
Yeah,
we're
that's the question.
constantly talking about. It's this like my marketing manager, she's incredible, and I always thought marketing was kind of stupid. But I didn't really know what marketing was. I thought it was like, putting your logo on something. And what she's really said is like marketing is about demonstrating credible expertise. And then how do you create awareness around that? So the top of the marketing funnel is awareness. And so her entire focus is uh, how do you get your voice noticed in a sea of voices? And she's done decent at it. Like we started a YouTube channel and it's done very well, doing podcasts like this, but I don't know. That's the question.
I know for me, when I think about it, it's like, how do you start to create a narrative in the subconscious that CEOs, CTOs, VPs need to be having conversations with focus, even if
I mean,
they
I think
don't know yet. they,
I
they
th-
have problems.
it's like, so yeah, we're not big firms, you or I, and so and like you said, intentionally so. IBM and Accenture and Cognizant, they get the opportunity to like create the market, right? They invent terms and cloud natives and stuff like that, where I think what we have to do is figure out how we opportunistically embrace this like market wave, whatever Gartner is saying is appropriate, and then apply nuance to it that we know that these larger firms cannot. And the nice thing about being a small mid-sized firm is like I don't need hundreds of millions of dollars of customers. I need like one or two that are big and nice and understand why we're good. And that does it for me. And if I get that every year, it's awesome.
Yeah, in my world, I'd like to have 10, just because you don't want all your eggs in one basket.
I mean,
But
one or two new a
yeah,
year. So
yeah.
like you're built, yeah.
But even that, like, if I had consistently 10 customers with X number of people in each, dude, I'd be happy. I'm not greedy. I don't want the company to grow to the level where it becomes work and worry either. That's not me. There are people that want Elon Musk. They want, like, I don't need it. Like, I don't even live my life beyond. I live my life at a place where if this entire company folded overnight, I could go get a job for a couple $100,000 a year, and I'm gonna be fine. Like
I've thought that to myself too.
that's me, dude.
That's what I've thought too. Like I got to stay current enough on technology, so if something were to happen, I could always go write software somewhere. Um,
And get a salary that
yeah,
lets you continue to sort of maintain what you have. How many people get that next big salary, probably getting overpaid a little bit, right? Extend themselves to that, get
yeah,
fired, and now they can't get the salary back. That's
yeah,
always been a worry of mine too.
yeah, yeah. I'm right there with you on that one.
All right, dude. We're basically just about out of time. This has been a fun conversation for me. I don't get to talk to a lot of people that are in the relatively same line of business, so that was kind of
This was
fun.
great. I would love, I mean, I could talk about building and operating agencies all the time. I think it just gives us the breadth of experience you get when you work with 10 customers a year is so incredible. You see so many different people, political systems, bureaucracies, tech stacks, and you realize that like there is no one way to be correct. There's some mix of sugar, spice, and everything nice gets each company to the spot where they. One thing we always say, and I'm sorry for going on a little rant, but like we always say, like we're hired for our expertise, but we must never be so um, arrogant to say that we're better than our customers because they were successful enough to afford us. And so
Well,
like,
I have to tell my devs every once in a while that are on a client that's starting to create chaos. And I got to sit them down sometimes and tell them these guys are printing money because they built some sort of software that's
mhm,
solving problems. And it
yep,
is not to their sort of advantage to rewrite or replace that.
100%.
And so your job isn't to constantly be upset that the code is chaos. Your job is to go in and make them feel confident that you can yield that chaos, right? You can wield it and you can keep them going because that's never going to happen. And if you were in their shoes, would you invest money in something that's not broken, even though you think it's broken, right? So many devs take what they're doing personally or see something and they got to learn how to detach from that.
I also think 100%. I have this conversation all the time. And in every new dev that starts at Focus, we have this conversation. Like, because we do test-driven development like religiously. Um, and we just believe it's the right way to write code. But sometimes we get people that come to Focused and the the objective is to do test-driven development. And we have to remind them that like the goal is to not write tests. The goal of writing tests is to deliver, right? Like we test our software so we can keep delivering at the same clip, day over day over day versus, accumulating debt and then refactoring and accumulating debt and refactoring. And like I think there is something to be said about, yeah, devs like having empathy for the fact that this works. This system works. And yes, we're here now to like improve it, build on top of it, but like we need to understand that some great people built this before us. I actually have one small story, and if we're at time, you can say don't
We have
tell it.
time. We
But
have time.
okay, cool.
We got time too. No.
So I was at Pivotal, and I was at Pivotal. I was a brand new, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed dev. Thought I was so good, and IBM was a client of Pivotal, and so I was working with, I was pairing with an IBM guy, and we were working on doing a migration. We were containerizing an old Java app. This Java app was not designed to be containerized. It was state and like 12 factor. It was stateful. It wrote disk. And it was written prior to like any web framework. So they wrote a commander pattern to like parse the HTTP as it was coming in. It was
Wow.
crazy. I
Okay.
mean, I never
Yeah.
seen anything like this. And the whole time I'm sitting there pairing. I'm on a team of four, two IBM guys and me and one other person from Pivotal. And I'm sitting there just like shitting on the quality of this code in this like small group in an office. We're in a little pod in an office, and this other pivot guy from Pivotal, much more senior than me, he's like, "Hey, let's go grab a coffee." And so he kind of takes me out of the office, and we go downstairs to a coffee shop. And he's like, "Hey, I just want you to like, you're like sitting there complaining about this code. Um, couple things. Like, go when you get back to the computer, go check the Git diff on when some of the stuff you're changing was written." I'm like, okay, I can do that. And he goes, and then, you're saying, why didn't they use Spring? Go look at when Spring was created. Um, and I didn't really understand. So I go back and, I look at the get diff, and this app was written prior to Spring. Like it was younger than Spring. So they had invented patterns, and I'm blaming them for not approaching them. And then the other thing he said to me is like, look, this app has been running for like 30 years or 20, whatever, not 30, but forever. It's been running for a decent amount of time. And like, actually, the guy who wrote that original code is like sitting in our office. And so, like, have empathy for the fact that like they made this stuff work before you had these tools. And I think a lot of times devs forget that, especially consultants. We come in, we're hired for our expertise, we want to tell people what to do. And at the end of the day, like, the software runs. They built a company that can pay for our services to help improve it, and we need to have empathy for the fact that they're there, and acknowledgement
Yeah,
for like
uh,
it was a
it's a
humbling
great
experience for me.
story. Yeah, great story. There's a similar story where a piece of code was taken off a mainframe to run on existing compute, and somebody saw a routine and said, what kind of drugs was the guy on who wrote this? And somebody had to sit him down and say, that's why you're here today. That's why you're getting paid today, because that was the only way to get this software to run on the
Right,
big machine.
right.
And we're not going to touch it because it ain't broken, which is the other thing you got to tell young devs. Don't touch anything you're not needing to touch.
Yep,
Don't,
yep.
right? Those are great stories. The devs have to. I just last little bit. We just hired a new guy to work, and he was really getting frustrated at the code base, and I had to sit him down, and I said to him, I think that over the next 5 years, all you're going to see in the Go space is more and more legacy code.
Hmm.
Legacy code to me is code that nobody has a mental model of anymore.
Hmm.
It's not the age of the
I like
code.
that.
It's nobody has a mental model of it anymore, and so nobody really knows how to maintain it anymore. It has nothing to do with the quality, has nothing to do with the age, right? And with the amount of turnover that you see more and more, the chances are that the guy on this code base right now at the company may have only been working on it for 6 months, right? And so what I had to say to him is, when you see this type of situation, when you see the chaos or you feel the code is wrong, don't get mad and upset, get excited. Because if
Hmm.
you can learn how to come in and start small wins and start making that code better, you're going to have a job for the rest of your life. You're going to be
Hmm.
able to book $300 an hour
Yeah.
because you
It.
don't get mad, you get excited.
I love that legacy code because it is why devs recommend rewrites, because they're like, well, if I rewrite the whole thing myself, I can now have the mental model of the whole
That's
system
right.
in my head. It is. I've never heard it put so succinctly. I always think it's like so funny. Like, legacy code is it's so negative. Like creating people, but like as a dad, as a person, you want to create a legacy. Like, why can't we be proud of the legacy code we create? Like, the code we build should build legacies, and that code should be a legacy in itself. But for some reason, it's like, you're right. Like, I lose the mental model. I need to just rewrite it in the newest framework and something I can understand in microservices, whatever it is, so I can understand it.
Code
It's
base could be 6 months old and become legacy because there's
100%.
nobody now to maintain it.
No,
That's it.
100%.
And
It's
without tests, you're also
Yep,
you're out of the gate creating legacy code because now you don't even know what you're going to break, right?
100%.
So like you could take a piece of code that's legacy and get it out of that category just by making sure there's a test suite and by making sure you can now maintain it. It's
Yep,
not legacy anymore. Yeah.
yep.
But that's your job today. On Go developers are going to walk into more of those code bases today than ever before. Your
Hmm.
job is, how do you take a legacy code base and stop it from being legacy? If you can learn that, you're going to make $300 an hour before you know it, because that's how valuable you are. All right,
It's really good. It's really good. I like
now
that.
we're totally out of time. Austin, if anybody wants to reach out to you, I told you this hour and a half was going to go fast.
It did.
If anybody wants to reach out to you after the show, we'll put it in the show notes. What's the best way to talk to you?
I'm Austin BV everywhere. AUSTIN, B as in boy, V as in Victor, on X, LinkedIn, uh, email, everything.
You're on Blue Sky. Everybody's got to be on Blue Sky now.
I have a blue sky. I don't go to it that often. The AI community seems to still be really strong in X, so that's where I end up hanging out a lot. But um, I
That's
should
fair.
spend more time on blue sky.
All right, this is awesome. All right, This is the On Labs podcast signing off with Austin and Bill Kennedy, and we hope to see everybody again real soon.